Hello, neighbor. I'm Robert Burns, and welcome once again to another edition of Sound Off Louisiana. Today we are doing installment 5 of our series of interviews with former Alcohol and Tobacco Control Commissioner Murphy Painter. And I'm sure everyone was fascinated with where we left off with segment 4. So without delaying any bit, Mr. Painter, I want to turn the floor over to you for segment 5.
Thank you, Robert. I hope they're enthralled about all this stuff. I've been living it for 11 plus years. But anyway, I think we left off on the last time, Robert, with May of 2012, which was almost 2 years after I was let go or fired by the Jindal administration. I'm indicted the day before that budget for the Inspector General's office is going before the Senate to get eliminated, and Stephen Street's running around with the front page headlines that he finally got somebody indicted of some consequence, according to him, and that's why he's needed as the Inspector General. But again, for the law students and the people that are real law enforcement officers that know how things work and all this kind of stuff, assistant DAs, AUSAs, or anybody else in the world, the first thing you want to say is, well, how in the hell can a man get indicted for 43 counts of federal offenses, be exposed to 83 years in a federal penitentiary and $12.5 million in fines, and not be something there, not some smoke, not something some kind of way or whatever else? Well, I'm going to try in this segment to explain. I want to make sure that everybody understands, and everything that I portray, I have a document, or there's a court document or something that reflects everything that I'm saying. So anyway, the investigator who was allegedly in charge from the OIG's office, Stephen Street obviously is in charge, and the head of the investigation is Greg Faries, the former chief deputy of East Baton Rouge, the former chief of police of Baton Rouge, and the head investigator for the OIG's office. So, but Shane Evans is the point man, and once I did get indicted, finally I had some access to documents or some avenue through Freedom of Information requests and subpoena to try to get some information of what anybody was talking about or what I was allegedly being accused of in this matter, because I want to make it plain as day. And I think you can go back on the news media stuff back from that time in 2010, that when all of this broke initially, I said I had done nothing wrong, and I still sitting here today and telling the world and anybody else that I never woke up one morning in my life and said I'm going to break the law today, or I'm going to do anything to get indicted. In fact, I've done just the opposite, that I've made every attempt to work things for people, good people, yes, honest people within the system, but that I have never plotted and planned with anybody to screw over anybody or to fabricate any crime against anybody in the world. But okay, so from 2000, which I think Shane Evans testified that he received this case on either the 10th or the 10th of August. I was fired on the 13th, so he investigated it initially for 2 days, and then I was let go. And he continued to be the lead investigator on that case until after February of 2011, when the OIG printed its report and gave that to the public with their so-called allegations at that time of what I was allegedly doing or not doing. And I'm saying allegedly, but unfortunately their report never had the word alleged in there anywhere. Never one time was the word alleged used in any of their vernacular. But anyway, so again, finally we get access to the documents, and we get copies of Shane Evans' reports that he had interviewed people between August and, let's say, February, and maybe some after that, with everything else that was going on at that particular time. But the main issue that they kept portraying and saying was that as the Agency of Alcohol and Tobacco Control for the state, that the law did not allow us access to the records, criminal record databases of the state police or the FBI through the computer system. That now, that is the most lucrative, I mean, unbelievable allegation to start with, and I could spend an hour talking about how much BS that one little bitty thing is, but it's what created the illusion of wrongdoing, which was totally 1,000% fabricated. 1,000% fabricated. Now, they indicted me, I think, I didn't bring the records, 12 or 13 people, maybe 14 people out of the 733 that they claimed that I ran over a 5 or 6 year period of time. 5 or 6 year period of time, when Shane Evans himself, in less than a year and a half, as an investigator for the Inspector General's office, ran over 2,000 or 2,100 of the same checks that I'm being charged with, and that they refused on my Freedom of Information request to release the names and the reasons that he had run those and everybody else in OIG's office had ran theirs. I was refused that information, but be that as it may. So his reports, and I think I can emphatically tell you this. Now again, I was indicted and exposed to all the stuff. It hurts me to say it again, so I won't say it. But I was exposed to all that, and not one human being that was allegedly a complainant or a victim in this whole situation had been interviewed personally.
Wow.
Not the first one. Every one of the reports that was issued was the Inspector General investigator called by telephone and spoke to the person on the telephone to find out whether, number one, they had anything to do with an alcohol beverage application, number two, as to whether they knew me or they had any dealings with the Office of Alcohol and Tobacco Control anyway, or other questions along that line. And there was never any follow-up, never anything that had to do with a face-to-face situation of a complainant. And not one of those people, not the first one, ever called the Inspector General's office. After the news broke on August 13th of 2010, you would think that if this was such a massive deal, that all these victims would have come forth and said, I've been victimized, I've been victimized, I've been victimized. Not the first human being came and said, called the OIG's office, the state police, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's office, anybody, and said, I've been the victim of anything that Murphy Painter did regarding databases with the state police or the FBI. Not the first person. So now let's talk about the, and I'm going to talk about all those other reports of the 13 or 14 people were basically bland, kind of just like that the one I just said, that they had no business with the Alcohol and Tobacco Control. So therefore they were saying, the investigator would say, therefore I was in violation of the law because they had nothing to do with Alcohol and Tobacco Control. Now, just to clear that part up too, we were participating with the FBI on task force that had to do with stuff that I cannot talk about. We would participate. We was on the DEA. We had officers of the Alcohol Tobacco Control that were commissioned federal agents to work with the DEA on drug task force stuff that we were dealing with almost on a day-to-day basis. Well, not almost, on a day-to-day basis for 3 or 4 years. We were doing ICE, assisting ICE, which is the immigration people, who at that time we was at war, whether y'all remember that or not, in the Middle East, and right after 9/11 and everything going on with that, and it was all a big deal. So there was thousands of people that we were dealing with as a bona fide 1,000% statutory law enforcement agency, that of checking people that might or might not be directly involved with an alcohol beverage license, but you can book they were involved with either somebody that had an alcohol beverage license or doing something they wasn't supposed to do, or they were on one of these peripheral situations that had to do with one of those other investigations that was going on. Now, they disregarded all that. Nobody ever even asked anybody about that. Nobody ever even brought that into in the equation. So, but this is the best report in the world, and to share with the world my thought process, if that's how you want to do it, because I'm the, I guess, wham, and I'm the victim, you know. Shane Emmons wrote a report that basically said, involving a lawyer, and I had been almost every weekend for 15 years, because this job was not something that you could turn away for a split second. It would eat you to death if you did not pay the proper attention to it. Now, that's as long as you're trying to do the right thing. If you were just, I was there to play golf every day. I was there to collect my check from the government and let everybody else make whatever decision they want and not accept any responsibility for nothing. It would have been simple. But we were trying to run things the right way, do the right things for the right reason. And so I was on top of everything. You know, I was a hands-on guy. Every weekend I spent a day, and sometimes 2 days, 3 or 4 hours, 5 hours, sometimes 6 hours on a Sunday or a Saturday, of taking care of business that you had to catch up with, because if you didn't, it would eat you up. So I'm there one Sunday, I believe. And I look on my emails, and on Saturday in the middle of the day, I had a lawyer that emailed me and said, I hope you don't mind, I got your email address from so-and-so who we both know, but I'm having a problem. I have a clerk working for me, and forgive me, it's not a clerk. She might have been a paralegal. Or something else. Very qualified, very professional person working for me that is having trouble with a permit. Now, ironically, I only got permits that had trouble. I mean, that's where they wound up. They wound up on my desk. And the way the system worked, there wasn't supposed to be any trouble. We had a doggone policy and procedure manual that outlined every step of the way what you were supposed to do to get a permit or not get a permit. So when it wound up that there was a problem with it, something, there had to be a reason for that. So I text him or email him back on a Sunday and say, you know, normally when I get a complaint like you just said, that nobody's cooperating with you, doing the things, this and that and other, that it normally goes back to the person applying, hasn't followed the rules. We give them an outline for the permitting process, or they're trying to bypass something, and that's normally what it is. It's not normally our fault. So I'm just warning you about that. But I don't have access to the file, but I'll be glad to look at it. If I'll be glad to look at it and share whatever I find and try to help you with the process. Well, he emailed me right back and said, "Man, I can't believe you in your office on a Sunday taking care of business. I appreciate you emailing me back. Here's the problem. Look it up Monday morning, and if it's okay, I'd like to meet with you Monday afternoon and see if we can't resolve this. Well, the client is very agitated that it's taking so long. Now, our law said we had to issue a denial permit in 35 days, and this had been over 90 days.
Oh.
So there obviously is something wrong, okay? So I said, sure. How about 2 o'clock tomorrow? He said, I'll be there at 2 o'clock. Now, I don't know who in the hell's on the other end of this computer. They had people trying to set me up every day that I was in that office. Every day somebody was trying to set me up to get their claws into me so that they could force me to make a decision that wasn't legal or that benefited somebody that they wanted to benefit. So my policy was a legal, completely above board policy. In fact, the governor had the exact same policy that I had with his state police entourage, which that probably is a whole lot more questionable because he's not a law enforcement officer at all. His office is not a law enforcement agency. But I'm sitting here, I'm a full-fledged law enforcement agency. I got somebody I don't know approaching me.
Right.
I'm not going out finding nobody to run checks on. He approached me. So I ran him through the computer.
All right.
As soon as I got off the phone with him, I ran him through to get his driver's license information to prove that he existed, which is exactly what every police officer does. You don't exist to a police officer until what? Until he says, let me see your ID.
Right.
Once you see that ID, you know who you're dealing with, and that makes it an official situation. So I ran him through, saw who he was, made a copy of his check to put in the file to show that I did the diligence to prove that I wasn't talking to somebody from another part of the world or whatever else, or somebody trying to set me up. And I went on about my business for about 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, I get another email from him that says, well, look, I'm not the one that's really handled this. The girl in my office is the one that's been handling this. Is it okay if I bring her with me also? I said, absolutely, absolutely. Let's clear this thing up. What's her name? Gave me her name. I piddled around with the stuff that I was dealing with myself. About 10 minutes later, I ran her name through the computer, made a note of it, put it in the file. Now, the note I did make of it, and again, you can call it paranoia, you can call it whatever you want, was from the situation of, if she's the one having a problem, well, I got to try to figure out why she's having the problem. So I recognized the name, her last name, which I'm not going to give anybody, but it fit the name that I'd only heard one time before in my life, and that person was the chief deputy of a sheriff's office somewhere around here. So I make a note of that, and that again goes in my mind as to whether I'm being set up or not, or whether it's an honest situation where there's an honest problem that somebody's asking me to intervene. Because I'm going to be honest with everybody in the world, completely honest. The people who work for me didn't necessarily love me. I mean, they wanted, every one of them wanted to get something on me, especially issuing a permit or doing something that I wasn't supposed to do, because that way the next time they did the same thing, I would be there and they would say, well, if you do this to me, I'm going to expose this to you. And on 15 years, that never happened, never once happened. So anyway, so the next day, 2 o'clock comes along, they walk into my office, and I'd already looked at the file and I already figured out, it didn't take me a half a minute to figure out what the hell was going on. What was going on was the people that were applying for the permit were not citizens of the United States. They didn't have any citizenship. Now, the agent should have known, he had been there long enough, and he should have been able to look up himself and figure out one way or the other. But he gave it to a supervisor, and the supervisor, for whatever reason, balked on it too. Instead of resolving it, they just kept putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. I guess hoping somebody would do just exactly what happened here, would be take the burden off of them
Yeah.
of making the decision whether that was right or not to give a permit to somebody that didn't have a citizenship license card. So anyway, I saw exactly what it was. Now this is a reputable place. It has a number of places around now, but this was the first one ever in the state of Louisiana at that time. So when they come in, we had a little small talk with the deal. I tried to explain to them almost what I'm telling you right now, how things get screwed up, how I got to the 90 days, and I don't think it was anything intentional, and that the question that everybody wanted answered, nobody would really ask it to get it answered, and then it comes back to me to make a discretionary decision whether to do it or not. So that's why I do the diligence that I do to do it. And I told both of them right then and there to their face. I said, I run a driver's license check on everybody that calls me to verify exactly who I'm dealing with and to document it. And ironically, that's part of the documentation that was missing after the search that the OIG did. All that documentation just seemed to disappear somewhere. But anyway, and then I said to the young lady, I said, "Are you happen to be kin to so and so, the chief deputy?" She said, "Yes, that's my daddy." So I said, "Well, I had dealings with him less than 2 months ago on another matter where he's from. He's a fine guy. I've known him in law enforcement for 10 or 15 years, which gave me, again, comfort in believing that she was real and honest, and that the lawyer, who I'd never met before, was being honest in what they were saying, and I wasn't being set up." So I signed and issued the permit. Okay? Well, this is what Shane Evans' report said. Shane Evans said that I was contacted by a lawyer, and that contacted by a lawyer, and the lawyer was having trouble with a permit being issued, and that before I would agree to meet him, I had to have the name of his assistant, which I ran through the computer, and then the next day when we met, that I got the name of him and his assistant, and that I set the meeting up, and that he called a friend of his, who I won't say who it is, and that friend told him, absolutely be sure and bring that pretty girl to see Mr. Painter. Something along that line, that he likes that. That's what he likes. So they show up. Like I said, I issued a permit. In his dialogue, he says that when I signed off to go get the permit, that I told the young lady that I said, the only reason I even met with y'all today was because I ran your picture through the computer and I thought you were pretty. Woo. So that's why I set this meeting up, was to see you. Now, that is the biggest bunch of poppycock, and in my opinion, it's criminal. Okay. Now, I mean, that's somebody else to decide, but I'm sitting here telling you that none of that ever happened. And finally, years later, long after I'm found not guilty, the lawyer gives me an affidavit saying that he never said anything like that. The person he supposedly called and said, bring somebody pretty with you, says that never took place. That conversation never happened. And the girl and the lady, the woman in deposition said that absolutely nothing like that ever took place, and that she never once told anybody that she was concerned about the way that I looked at her or gawked at her or whatever else, which was all stuff that Shane Evans had in his OIG report. Never happened. Never happened. Now, go ahead.
Can I ask one thing?
Sure.
Because maybe I'll miss something here, and I'm sure there's going to be at least one or two viewers who may have the same question. What happened with the citizenship issue?
Well, the citizenship issue, they had the proper documentation with green cards and all that stuff, and the law allowed, there was a provision in the alcohol beverage law that allowed them to get a license. And that should have been decided before it ever got to me. But I'm not gonna, 15 years, what should happen and shouldn't happen, and I could have sent it back through the line and made somebody do something different and all that stuff. They'd have sat down probably and waited another 30 days to make it happen, just to get out from under what they would call my thumb, or to show that I couldn't tell them what to do. But anyway, so
thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, everything was issued, and so okay. So now we want to let's talk about the indictment. But that's the quality of Inspector General reports that led to my indictment. Okay? Now, for all again scholars out there, everybody should have heard or known, and if you've never had to deal with it, God bless you, and I hope like hell you never have to deal with it, where somebody who, instead of saying, let's go investigate this thing and see if there's anything wrong done or happened, or where somebody says, I need something on this guy, you go find something that you can accuse him of to say that he done something wrong. And I don't have any direct proof of that, but I'm sitting here telling you that's the only thing that makes any sense. Now, I filed suit against the Inspector General's office before anybody was investigating me for any federal crime or any other crime in the world. I filed suit. I had all the documentation. All I needed was to get everybody under oath and show that Shane Evans fabricated the affidavit for the search warrant. He fabricated the search warrant. He fabricated the damn reports that I just got finished telling you, and not by himself. He didn't do that by himself.
No.
This was all being orchestrated. He was just a henchman in that situation. So prior to the grand jury, Shane Evans leaves the Inspector General's office and goes to work as the chief investigator for the coroner's office.
In East Baton Rouge.
In East Baton Rouge, yeah. For Bo Clark, still there. And mate, I don't want to offer any onus or whatever else. I'm just telling the truth.
Yeah.
Now, it would seem like if he was the head investigator that brought me to this trough, that he'd have been the one to go before the grand jury and testify before a grand jury of how bad I was, of all the wrongdoings that I did and everything else that I'm being accused of. He don't work there anymore. Now, I'm not saying that the reason he didn't work there anymore was because they didn't want him going before a grand jury. Because anything he'd have said in any of those reports that I just gave you would have been an outright lie and would have been committing perjury before a grand jury. So he don't testify.
Wow.
Tom Bolton, another investigator now that took over his spot, and I'm not sure whether he was Shane Evans' supervisor. There's been some word that maybe he was Shane Evans' supervisor in between Greg Farris or whatever. But anyway, Tom Bolton goes before the grand jury and has about a 8-10 page expose that he reads to this grand jury with all the allegations that Shane Evans has accused me of. Tom Bolton hadn't done 1 ounce of investigation before he went before that grand jury. Not that I know of, not 1 ounce. Now, grand jury is a secret, and you know, I wanted to go before the grand jury. My lawyer said no, that would be ludicrous. I don't know whether that's true or not. Sometimes I wish I'd wouldn't took that information, that advice, and went before this group. But be that as it may, once you indicted and they're gonna bring you to trial, anybody that testified before that grand jury, they have to give you a copy
Yes.
of their transcript of what they said, what their accusations were. So they might have brought 25 or 30 people before that grand jury, because I can't, it's all secret. I can't get that information. But ironically, the only transcript that we got was Tom Bolton's transcript. So either they brought a bunch of people that went before that grand jury and made allegations against me of all these horrendous crimes that I supposedly committed, and then chose not to use those people to prosecute me, or Tom Bolton is the only one as an investigator. He has absolutely zero knowledge firsthand of me doing anything to any victim, anybody that they want to claim was that I hurt or disbarred any kind of way in this doggone journey that they put me on. So that's how I got indicted.
Wow.
The only information that was given that grand jury that was used at trial was the testimony of Tom Bolton, the Inspector General investigator. Now, again, so I'm sitting here indicted now, and that's when I finally get access to my information, and I get the names of the people that they are accusing me of. And let me make one other deal here.
Absolutely.
I want this to be documented the best way in the world it can be. I was involved in 3 or 4 serious, real serious, big time investigations as a law enforcement officer and as the head of alcohol and tobacco control when they let me go on the 13th of August 2010. On that day, August the 13th, 2010, I went to the state library in front of the Capitol, right by the Department of Revenue building, because somebody had sent out an email to all the senators and representatives in the governor's office making all kind of allegations against me. I think I said that in another deal.
You did.
Okay, so I traced it, had my computer guy trace it back to the computer room at the library.
Yes.
So me and a lawyer that worked for me, who was part of what I call the good guys in my office. I had 5 or 6 people that I could count on to counteract the internal affairs investigation I had on, people that was issuing permits that wasn't supposed to be issued. And we went to the library, and I went to the door and looked up, and they had a camera there. So I was going to be able to see who went in there at 8:35 on August the 6th, I believe it was, which ironically was 2 days after Swear first went to the OIG's office, and the OIG's office pretty much told them they wasn't going to do anything, wasn't doing anything with her complaint.
Uh-huh.
So 2 days later, this email goes out to the world, making all kind of accusations, and the only person that could know, or the people that could know the half-truths that was in that deal, had to be people working for the Office of Alcohol and Tobacco Control.
Wow.
I mean, it was all confidential information that nobody else had access to. So anyway, so I go in there, and the director of the library is not there that week or that day. Won't be back till Monday. So I make an appointment with her Monday morning. I'm gonna go back. They wouldn't release the footage without talking to her. And I was going to have that case solved Monday morning. Now, they fired me that afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the Freedom of Information request, no lawyer, whatever else, after that happened, I continued to file to get a copy of that tape.
A video, uh-huh.
That video. Well, the Inspector General's office sends their lawyer to the library, not the agent now, which figure that out, you know, and not, the only reason I can see as a law enforcement person as to why you would send a lawyer instead of the agent supposedly investigating this case is so you can maintain lawyer-client privilege if the question comes up, or say that you're not entitled to that information. I mean, these ain't dummies. These people ain't dumb by no stretch of the imagination. So the lawyer goes over there, gets a copy of the stuff,
Okay.
goes back allegedly to the Inspector General's office, looks at it. Now, he don't have a clue what the hell he's looking for, who he's looking for, or maybe he had all the clues who he was looking for or not looking for. But ironically, my Freedom of Information request comes back and says, the Inspector General lawyer came over here and got a copy of the tape, came back and said that he didn't see anything on it that was any problem, and told us to go ahead and video back over, override that deal. Now, I'm just 50 years in law enforcement on 3 different levels or whatever else. Head number 2 man in an agency for 15 years, head man for another 15 years. That is the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard of in my life. If there's an issue anywhere, a law enforcement person, a true real law enforcement officer, is supposed to preserve evidence. Whether it helps or it hurts, they're supposed to preserve it so that there are no loopholes and no gaps anywhere where somebody will say, well, you say there's nothing on there, you don't have a copy of it anywhere. Did you see anybody come in and out during that time? Well, he didn't see anybody he recognized. Well, how in the hell could he recognize? He ain't got a clue what the hell's going on.
Correct. Well, let me ask you this. In your own, I know this requires a little speculation on your part, but do you think they went and got that tape as a result of knowing you were pursuing the tape?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, the second option was...
No, absolutely.
Okay, the second option was they had ran their own background check.
No, they ain't run nothing.
I got
they didn't go get that tape until I started hooting and hollering after all this was over and saying I wanted that tape. I sent the Freedom of Information request to the library and to the Inspector General's office for a copy of the freaking tape.
Oh, so they knew full well. Okay. Well, I'm glad I asked that question.
There's no ignorance here at
Okay.
all, as far as the 3 things go. You know, ignorance, stupidity, or complicity. Ignorance is not one of them.
All right.
So, and I don't think stupidity is one of them. But be that as it may. So I still feel that all that would have been resolved all my issues would have been resolved real simple if somebody would have just took up one of the 3 and 4 investigations I had going on. It would have cleared up 99.99999% of everybody's issues of anything that was there, but nobody wanted to listen to me. I mean, I was put out in the pasture with nobody around, and you wanna see how many friends you got. Go get indicted for something.
Yeah.
And see how many people hang around that was your old friends that you done everything in the world for, attorney generals and all. So anyway, it's that is something that needs to be documented and understood, that they took that tape and they basically erased it without maintaining it. Now they claim they're law enforcement people, and I say, well then, if you're a law enforcement person, then explain how in the hell you let that happen. Show me the tape. Show me that there was nobody on there that did all that intentionally, which was trying to shake me down or blackmail me. That's what all this was about, was a shakedown. And I mean, what I was being shaken down about is a whole nother deal. And after we get through the trial, if anybody else wants to hear all those things, we can go over all them individually one at a time. And this will be a 24-hour expose.
Not to worry. I've got the time, and I've got the digital recording. I don't have to worry about a tape being written over.
So, I'm indicted. Okay. Now, let's get all the players correct, and then that'll be enough for the day.
All right.
I was indicted by the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Middle District of the state of Louisiana. Don Cazayoux was the U.S. Attorney at that time.
Okay.
Don Cazayoux had been a state representative. Don Cazayoux had been a congressman before he got appointed to that position. I had dealings with Don Cazayoux through my office when he was a state representative and when he was a congressman. And I consider him to be top flight, above board, and as honest as a person, if you want to use the word politician, a political person of anybody I ever met. Now, ironically, he recused himself whenever all this happened.
Okay.
And they appointed Walt Green to be supposedly acting U.S. Attorney in this narrow, specific matter, is the way I understood that it went. And somewhere down the line, if I ever live long enough to write the whole book on everything, I'll explain to everybody Walt Green's ironic connection with me in some other matters and some other people in another lifetime. But be that as it may. So Walt Green is now the supposedly U.S. Attorney in charge, and then there's two assistant U.S. attorneys that are allegedly put in charge to prosecute my case. Now, the FBI has refused
that's correct.
anything to do with this. Now, I could tell you what some agents told me that was said or wasn't said. I don't really get involved in hearsay whatsoever. I'm just telling you that it was complete poppycock for somebody to say that somebody committed a federal crime to run a driver's license check on somebody because they come and see you and you're head of a law enforcement agency, and they come into your office supposedly for some business purposes, and that there was some crime that took place when you ran that driver's license check on that person. Not a background check. Now they in their report, Shane Evans kept saying, oh, Murphy Painter ran so-and-so, they have nothing to do with an alcohol beverage license, and he got their secret information, their social security number, their date of birth, and all their confidential information. There's no social security numbers anymore on a damn driver's license. That went away a long time ago. and date of birth or whatever else. I mean, what you gonna do? I memorized 733 date of births. He memorized 2,100 date of births and social security numbers when he ran his through the computer or whatever. That's all nothing but poppycock, nothing but pure freaking poppycock. So I'm sitting here going through all this process. The FBI is not handling it. Well, I didn't file suit against the Inspector General.
Mm-hmm. That's an important point.
I filed suit against the Inspector General, calling them a bunch of liars.
In September of 2011.
August of 2011.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, August
I'm
of
sorry.
2011.
I was 1 month
No,
off.
that's all right. I'm just being specific. So how in the hell can the federal government use the Inspector General's office as their only sole investigators to make a case against me to prove that what they did to misalign me, to defame me, is not true? That was the whole only reason I got indicted, ladies and gentlemen. The only reason I got indicted. You want to say that the levels of government are supposed to be separate and apart, and how it used to be, not anymore. It used to be that each level was supposed to be looking out for whether the other level was doing what they're supposed to do now, and double checking. I mean, in the old days, the old cops will remember this. You didn't even hardly talk to an FBI agent. You never would talk to a U.S. attorney person, because there was always that deal there, whether you were trying to do something wrong, whether they were going to get in trouble or whatever else. So for the U.S. Attorney's Office to get in bed with the Inspector General's office to try to prosecute me in this particular situation is another pile of crap. There is no way in hell that should have ever happened. Now, it's easy for me to sit back here and say that, because hell, it did happen. So everybody said, oh man, it must have been something bad. It must have been something real serious. Well, that is exactly what I had to live through the next year and a half after I got indicted, because I got indicted in 2012 in May. We didn't go to trial until December of 2013. I mean, every lawyer that I talked to, every human being that I talked to kept saying, well, man, they didn't do this because of no reason. Now you got to be lying, meaning me. I have to be lying. There got to be something out there that they got on you. They got to have something on you, or they'd have never done this. I kept telling them, there is nothing there. I have done nothing criminal anywhere in anything to do with this, to have even been approached by, I'd love to use the word that I want to say, Inspector General people accusing me of a freaking crime. This is nothing but poppycock BS. And it was then, I knew it then, and it always was when I had to go to trial and risk everything that I ever worked for, and whatever, to try to clear my name, or try to make people understand just exactly what the hell was going on and what took place. But that is a scenario of where I wound up on December, even with my lawyers that I paid very good money for, by the way, very good, and I had no idea, not even inkling, and neither did any lawyer that worked for me, that if I got found not guilty, that the state would have to pay for my legal fees. And all that came out of my pocket, or my family's pocket, people I had to borrow money for or whatever else, and owed money for, and because I was not going to sit there and plead guilty to something that I didn't do. Now, I'm sure there's some other stuff that I had here that I missed we can go over next time, but But what I'd like to do next time, Robert, would be for me and you I met Robert at the trial.
That's
I've
correct.
said that a few times before. Never knew him before anywhere in my life. He come there after the first day. He came there and said, introduced himself and said, I came here with the understanding that I thought I was going to be here for a few minutes and leave, and that you had to be nailed to the cross, and that this had to be such a waste of time for you to even be contesting all
That's
these
exactly
charges.
right.
And he said, everything I heard today has me spinning. In fact, I even lost my hair over some of it. No, I'm just picking it. But he said, would you mind if I print something or put something out about what's going on here? I said, well, I've been trying to get somebody to understand and see what I've been saying for over 3 years now, that there's nothing here. So you go for it. And that's whatever relationship he and I have, that's how it started.
That's correct.
And that's how we wound up here today. So next go round we'll start talking about the trial, and
Boy, am I anxious for that.
and see where we can enlighten everybody that didn't get a chance to sit there and see that deal go down. So thank you, Robert.
You're quite welcome, and I'm looking very forward to that next segment because, as Mr. Painter just relayed, that's how we met, and he's given a little bit of inclination as to the lack of substance, but we won't destroy it for this upcoming segment. I'm looking very forward to it because this won't just be something he's saying. I sat through the entire trial, so I'm very anxious for us to have installment 6, and as he said, not that the camera is going to have any flattering things about me, but I will be seated next to him so that we can tell that story together.
6 feet apart.
Gotta be 6 feet apart. There you go. Can't take any chances with you, Murphy. So,
Just kidding.
well, I think everybody knows both of us are just kidding. So thank everyone for having tuned into segment 5, and we look forward to bringing you segment 6 real soon. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Robert.
You bet.